Somebody asked me once what I taught. I said, I teach mathematics, I teach physics, I teach chemistry, I teach psychology, English, and a little bit of photography. They're all the same.
He's certainly not the typical teacher, not the typical stereotype teacher. He's a dynamic force.
I'm realizing now that Mr. King set us off on a voyage, and it's a voyage that we're still on.
Mr. King taught us all to just really walk in, take it all in, and then express yourself.
And what Warren's taught me is take 2 steps back, spend the time and energy it takes to make it great.
A genuine friendliness, which sometimes maybe you didn't get from other instructors.
The camera was this entryway into a whole new world that was different than where we were at.
'73. I put my books in a locker in the Fine Arts Building. Wow, that was a long time ago. At that time, I didn't realize just how close it was to FA3. FA3 was the photo room. Back then, I didn't know just how much time I would be spending in that room. Nor did I realize just how important the life of Mr. King would be to me. Mr. King was my photography instructor. He influenced so many students through photography. He changed so many lives. I mean, he was the type of person that... Wait a minute. I'm getting way ahead of my story.
H. Warren King was born in Los Angeles in 1924. His dad, Elmer King, was a teacher at Manual Arts High School, where he oversaw the school yearbook, taught print shop, and journalism. Warren's 2 older brothers eventually became teachers, but Warren didn't know exactly what he wanted to do. At Fremont High School, Warren wanted to study animal husbandry, thinking he might someday become a farmer. But Warren's dad suggested that he try out a class in photography. Fremont High in those days had an amazing vocational photography program, taught by a famous teacher, Mr. C.A. Bach, who had once been a cameraman for Fox Studios. Bach ran the classes like a professional newspaper office and sent his best students out on photography jobs for the local papers. Mr. Bach had successful former students working in studios all over Hollywood, as well as others that shot for newspapers and magazines throughout the USA. Yes, the former Fremont photography students pretty much owned the local photo scene in those days, and so many of Bach's former students came into lecture that Warren was ultimately convinced that instead of animal farming, photography sounded like the right career for him. Senior year at Fremont High had gone pretty well for Warren. He shot sports and odd assignments for the Los Angeles Times and the Examiner. But good old Uncle Sam had some other assignments he wanted H.W. King to shoot. Warren was recruited to join up with a combat photography unit that was being formed by some of the photojournalists of the Los Angeles Times. Warren figured he should do his part, and he might as well see the war through a camera lens. After a rigorous boot camp experience that included commando training, he was shipped off to London and then France. Private King was now part of the 167th Signal Photo Company, made up of 15 units, composed of 4 men each, including a still photographer, movie cameraman, jeep driver, and a commanding officer.
So I was 19 years old and eager to please, and I wanted an assignment. So they asked for volunteers to photograph a German surrender. My hand was up immediately. I don't know why. I'm not the hero type. So we reported to the German headquarters in Beaugency, France, just below Paris. And we were told by the German general, he came and shook our hands, very, very cordial gentleman, shook our hands and said, "Gentlemen, we've decided that we're not going to surrender as we had planned, so we're forced to take you prisoner." And I expected to be shackled and chained and so forth, but they just took us to a very nice hotel. They took my sidearm and my machine gun and left me with my cameras so I could actually take photographs while I was being held there. And then the next day, the German general called us back in and said, "Gentlemen, we've decided we're going to surrender after all because we can see that it's useless." So they gave us back all of our stuff. And I was able to photograph this big surrender of German troops, 20,000 of them. We made the Saturday Evening Post, Collier's, so we got real good coverage, and I was real happy with it. I was assigned at one time to travel with the U.S. Army Band. Fantastic outfit. I traveled with Marlene Dietrich when she was there. She was over there to entertain the troops, but I think she was really entertaining the generals, but that's aside. Another job I was going to have was to photograph Glenn Miller on his tour, but he was shot down over the channel before they made it over there. I remember the towns as being just flattened. The churches completely. I always remember I did a series of photographs of the cross still hanging in a lot of the churches, and that it got to me. We were going to make our final move to the Rhine River in the town of Linnick, Germany. It was a bar. At the end of the street, just across the river, was a German pillbox throwing machine gun bullets up that street, and we got a kick out of the guys. We'd go to that bar and fill their helmet with beer and crawl on their bellies, come back to our house and enjoy it. We knew that there was a big attack coming that morning where we were going to attack the Germans across the river with phosphorus shells. I was with a bridge building outfit at the time. The fellows were laughing and crying and praying, and the phosphorus started flying 3 o'clock in the morning, and I went upstairs to take night shots of the phosphorus shells bursting on the river, just beyond the river, and our troops proceeding, but I couldn't get very much, being nighttime and pitch black, except for that phosphorus. So I just decided to take my camera, rest it on a windowsill, and open the lens. And I got a great photograph. I was knocked downstairs right after I opened the camera, and I had a terrific concussion from it, but I had enough sense to wake up and take my camera and put the slide back in and hold that photograph, and I still have it. And then the next day, I walked across the bridge that they had made, one of these pontoon bridges, and started walking in the countryside and seeing all the complete area was just completely flattened. And all of a sudden, a German soldier would come running at me with his hands up and say, "Comrade, I surrender." I didn't know what to do, so I said, "Well, go ahead of me and I'll follow you." So another one saw him, so he decided he wanted to surrender too. They were just scared to death, and they would be willing to join me if I'd take them back to the American side and to get a nice warm meal. And so I came back with about 30 prisoners. Big hero. I'm not the hero type, but this is exactly what happened.
In 1950, we had a new photography teacher come into our class, and his name was H. Warren King.
After the war, Warren left the Army and returned home to L.A., and there he met and married Dottie, a young lady from New Jersey. Warren soon found himself managing a Westwood portrait photography studio.
One day, a former teacher of mine came in, and she said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I manage this studio." She said, "Well, why aren't you a teacher like everybody else in your family?" I said, "Well, I haven't really given teaching a thought, and I don't have any college under my belt at all." She said, "Well, how many years have you been a photographer?" And I said, "Well, I've been a photographer now for 4 years, plus 3 years in the Army." She said, 7 years, that's all you need to become a teacher. Believe it or not, teaching sounded pretty good because it was a steady job, and I'd bring a check home every month, except the summer. And so I thought I would give it a try. So I just decided to go down and talk to the principal at Poly High. He interviewed me, and he said, "Mr. King, you are our new photography teacher."
I was very impressed with him, as were most of the students in the class.
Many of the students thought that Mr. King appeared to be very young. I didn't see him. I saw him to be a very mature man.
I think all the students there, and especially the girls, loved him.
We felt like he was one of us. He was young, vibrant, energetic.
And later on, I found out that he was a combat photographer, and maybe through those experiences, that's why he had such a mature nature.
He really got us down to the nitty-gritty of things. We really started learning photography and enjoying it. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Mr. King's class there, he himself promoted cooperation among all students, regardless of their race, of ethnicity, whatever. This was the type of person that he was.
Mr. King stands out sort of alone in my experience. And he's probably the only teacher that I really remember. Mr. King stuck 50 years.
I actually start before zero. I took photographs of the construction of the school.
The 1950s were a boom time in LA. New houses were going up everywhere. Warren put $200 down on a home in the San Fernando Valley. Then he got some pretty good news. A brand new high school was being built in Reseda, just a 5-minute drive from Warren's new home.
He was chosen to start up a photography program at the new Reseda High School.
Warren supervised the darkroom construction, and when the school opened in the fall of 1955, Reseda High School had the first photography classes in the San Fernando Valley. The first few months at Reseda were a challenge for Warren until some students learned about his new photo class. Eventually, the word spread about the fun photo class and the great new instructor.
I enrolled knowing nothing about photography in Mr. King's class.
It was a challenge to take the class.
It was an opportunity for me during the school day to spend an hour, which was really exciting, with a good instructor.
I wanted to really teach it as if they were going to be photographers. That's the way I was taught, the only thing I knew.
I rose to the lofty level of president of the photography club. We held our meetings every Friday, and we would vote for Picture of the Week. I strived to get my picture on a 16 by 20 board up high with the people who were good. Never made it, though Mr. King did compliment me from time to time on some outstanding test strips that I made.
Whether I was good or not, it didn't matter. I was still welcome to be there at any time.
He was just a very, very fine person who imparted a feeling to all students, those who were good and those that weren't so artistic like myself, that he cared about us, that it was important.
Mr. King didn't care whether we were male or female. He encouraged us to go out there and be the best that we could be.
Warren never gave you too many answers. He allowed you to work through a problem and discover the solutions for yourself. And that basically there's no limits.
I was really fortunate. Maybe I wasn't fortunate, I don't know, but I did not have to go through this practice teaching thing. Maybe I wouldn't have made it if I had to do that. I don't know.
I forgot all my calculus, I forgot all the trigonometry, I can't recite any of the poetry that I had to suffer through in English class. But the skills that I learned from Mr. King have been a lifelong benefit, which I have greatly appreciated.
Well, here in old FA3, we had many youngsters from troubled homes and some from very happy homes. It didn't make any difference as far as what they were going to accomplish here.
I didn't really feel I belonged anywhere at that time.
Just about the first thing we did when we opened this program was to form that photography club. This gets all the students together.
Mr. King told me about Photo Club, gave the invitation, didn't say you need to come, it's not part of the class, not part of your grade, but come and join us and see if you don't like it. And I did. And I spent a lot of time in Photo Club, I made a lot of friends, and it gave me a place to go after school instead of to an empty house with a working mother who wasn't there. Mr. King knew this and encouraged me to find my place, and my place was there in Photo Club.
And this is my own luxurious private office. First day I walked into this room, I saw this closet over here, and they used it, it was really designed for storing lights and light stands. We had these solid doors, and the first thing I did was I asked the custodian if I could have the doors cut in half to make Dutch doors out of it so I could see out. And he said, no way, you can't do that. So that was my signal to do it myself. So I got my own little saw from home, I cut the doors in half, and here's my private office.
He used to come in the morning and unlock that, I think it's still a closet or whatever. There used to be that sign in Warren's office, and it said, "Don't tell me how good you are, show me."
You'd come to him and say, "Warren, I have this idea," and he'd say, "Oh, I don't want to hear about it, don't tell me about it, show me."
Don't tell me how good you are, show me.
And that was his entire teaching philosophy encapsulated.
Okay, group, now there's just one word I want you to learn in here.
Kiss.
One of the most important lessons I learned from Mr. King was the KISS method.
And he would make a fist, and he would caress his arm like this. And he would stand in front of the class, and he said, "Kiss."
That's K-I-S-S. That means keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid.
I think we learn after a while that the reader of a photograph is a kind of a lazy person. And we have to make it very, very easy for that person to read our photographs. This is where I get this keep it simple thing.
Warren had a system, and it was a system of challenges, and he let every student know that he expected the world of them.
Over on this door was my infamous grade sheet, where I used to list all of the students and all of their assignments.
He put your grades up in front of the whole class, which was unbelievable. All the other students could see your grade.
It was quite a challenge to not be competitive in the class and not to try too hard.
He taught us to try anything that was new, not to step back from anything, just to dive in and give it a shot. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, well, then you go on and do something else.
Mr. King, he explains things very directly and precisely.
Making deadlines, working with simplicity, understanding human behavior.
I do implement the same things that I was taught when I was 17 years old going to Reseda High.
I believe Mr. King was a Johnny Wooden type of teacher. There again, he shows you that he had the skills himself by his experiences there, and he taught you and gave you the proper directions where you could display your skills.
This is the genius behind Warren King. It's this incredible, intense, positive energy. And in an atmosphere like that, you don't want to do second best.
Warren had this wonderful way of creating legends out of the people who had come before you in his program. He treated their reputations with such dignity and with such professionalism. You almost felt like you had to live up to the reputation of all of these people who he was mentioning, who of course were all of 20 and 19 and 18 years old.
And then as my people would graduate and become well known, they became kind of a god to these youngsters sitting in the class today. And I was able to get photographs from them and relate to them how this person sat in the very chair you were sitting in, and you can do it too.
Reseda High's photography students were always entering contests, and Mr. King was right there like a good coach, cheering us on. There was the Los Angeles County Fair Photo Contest, the Bank of America Award, the LA Times competition, the Focus Awards, the Optimist Club contest, and the United Way competition. We entered all the contests we could find, and it was always important to try and win the Picture of the Week award in Photo Club.
The weekly Picture of the Week contest we had in here, where the students would line up their photographs, this was strictly a student thing. The president of the club ran it. I sat in my little office back there and just kind of watched. Here's the ribbon we gave out for this weekly contest, the Picture of the Week. And the students would take this home and hang it on their own wall with the photograph and say, look what I accomplished.
The first thing I ever won was in a competition in Warren's class. I had some pictures of some Volkswagen doing something. I don't remember exactly what it was anymore, but I mean, the thrill of that, of seeing yourself do the results from what you did, translates into something later, and it still goes to today.
And I won an award. They printed my picture in the magazine, and I was so proud. I not only won a certificate, but $25. Do you know how much $25 was in those days?
When people appreciate your work, there's nothing more satisfying.
I remember winning grand prize in the salon, and at that moment, I got so much self-confidence out of that award and out of the congratulations of my peers, the fellow students, that it just took me light years ahead.
The first salon had only 100 photographs, but soon the show expanded to over 3,000 entries. For every salon, Mr. King recruited a panel of famous photographers to judge our work, and people came from all over Southern California just to see the show. Parents brought their sons and daughters to the exhibition, and many of these youngsters liked what they saw and chose to transfer to Reseda High from other school districts just to take Mr. King's classes. The most important part of our senior year in Mr. King's class was putting together our portfolio of photographs to send to the Kodak Scholastic National Photography Competition. Year after year, Reseda High School students had been chosen as the best student photographers in the country, winning more than 400 National Kodak Scholastic Awards and 9 portfolio scholarships. In fact, Mr. King's students dominated the Kodak Scholastic contest so much that in the 1970s, the organizers added a special category for creative and experimental images. The judges thought that this would level the playing field away from our professional photography style. Well, this turned out to be no real obstacle for us, and in the first year of the new category, Reseda High swept the awards for creative and experimental photos too.
One of the major goals for the students each year was the entering and taking part in the National Scholastic Competition. It was sponsored by Eastman Kodak and Scholastic magazines. There were 125,000 entries on an average in this competition each year. It gave the students a chance to really put together a nice piece of work. They had to actually submit 12 photographs. We have portraits, we have scenics, we have human interest, we have different techniques. It all works out to really a fine collection of photographs. And each youngster felt that his was the very best. And I feel that almost every one we sent had a good chance of winning. And I was quite thrilled when I got that phone call each time saying that so-and-so had won this competition.
During the 1970s, Mr. King began leading student groups on photography study excursions to Europe and Hawaii. Warren wanted us to see other places, experience new cultures, and photograph what we saw.
Warren was probably one of the best travel agents. I remember a time when he took us all to Hawaii. We would photograph during the day, and then at night, the film from all of our work was sent to Honolulu to be rush processed and then sent back so that we could review it together as a group the next day. But Warren had to think of some way to get all of these 60 young people's films put together in the same mail bag. So I was Martin King, and there was Jeff King and Bob King, so we were like the King family.
I worked at Vaughn's Market as a box boy, and I'd saved all my money for over a year so that I could go on this exotic Hawaiian photo tour. And I had this crummy old 64 Chevy that broke down, and it took some major cash to get back on the road. And basically that was the end of my trip. So I went to Warren to tell him that I wasn't going to be able to pay for the trip and that I wouldn't be able to go. And a couple days later, he found me and he said, John, I won't accept the fact that you can't go on this trip. You see, you pay what you can pay, and you'll be working for me. And you'll be the last person off the bus, and you'll look under the seats and make sure that nobody leaves anything, and you'll do whatever else I ask you to do. And I said, yes, sir.
I can still remember a story in Paris where I asked Warren if I could go and get up at sunrise to shoot at the Eiffel Tower. And Warren said I had class and that I wouldn't be allowed to. So I broke the rules and I stayed out all night. And I thought the subway was going to stay open 24 hours, but unfortunately in Paris they close at 2, so I had a long walk back to campus.
Well, there's two things that I remember about Switzerland is the location that we had. It was absolutely gorgeous. The other thing that I did was I conned several other people into going to Zurich and opening up Swiss bank accounts.
I was doing the 5W shoot that you always do with Mr. King. And so, you know, who, it was me, and what, I was buying these boots, and where was it? This was this great store. But I took so long buying it that he just left. But I got the greatest pair of boots there that I have to this day. And here they are.
There was a group of us in the Sistine Chapel, and if anybody who's been to the Sistine Chapel knows there's always a bazillion people in there. But the picture that I wanted was lying on the floor looking straight up. And so I had a group of friends from the photography club, we were all traveling together, formed basically a human circle around me so I could lie down and do this, which seemed like a great idea at the time. except as I was shooting pictures, the police came running up and the guards and everybody else, and it actually turned into quite a big row, and I think Mr. King basically tried to pretend like he didn't know us until they sort of rousted us out of there.
That trip to Europe was a mini lifetime experience. There was romance, adventures, I think all the things that I did with the photo group, and it just seemed to prepare me for more parts of my life.
And in the book, The Little Prince, it said something to the effect that the fox said, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly, and what is essential is invisible to the eye." And I think that is really Warren's lasting gift, is that he was able to make us all see a little bit more articulately with our heart as well as with our eye.
I'm so proud to be one of Warren's first students when he first started teaching, because I learned so much and achieved so much and have so much to treasure from that experience.
And it's not about technique and it's not about technology, but it's about the principles that Warren taught us.
He was the best, most powerful person I have ever come in contact with, who was genuinely interested in what he could bring forth from his students, not on an ego trip, but genuinely wanted to bring the best he could to everybody in that class.
There was always concern there for his fellow human beings, and I think in dealing with individuals, and me being a shy young man at the time, I think that really helped me understand and to deal with people.
When a teacher allows students to express themselves to the level that Mr. King did, it's such a gift. And when he would show us those great photographs, it just brings back so much emotional energy for me, because it really was the time that I learned to express myself and that I could do that, and that it's attainable. Mr. King gave us all that as a gift.
Photography has really been my whole life. Other than my wife, it just meant so much to me.